Hello, Sin Fam! Welcome back to the channel. My name is Cyanide, and if you're new to the channel, I just want to give you an extra special welcome. Let you know that I'm glad to have you here. Hope you enjoy yourself, but before we begin, you need to go down there and smash the living shit all that like button, subscribe to this channel, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any alerts from me. Why? Because I asked you to, and you don't want me to hit the sick Kevin over here on you, do you? See, he's learned some new tricks, and I don't think you want to find out what they are. Anyway, so in today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit more about what classes I think are best for people to begin with. All classes are not too bad, but there are certain ones that I think help people grasp the game a little bit more. As far as the class mechanics are not so complicated that they can start to build their base by understanding the world around them a little bit more. I'm gonna head over to my little throne room while we are talking. So, the first thing I want to say is I do believe that if you are new to an MMO, this is your first MMO altogether, or even really if you're a refugee coming over from WoW or some other game, but especially if you are brand new to MMOs, I think that one of the tanks in this game is actually a really good idea, because it puts you kind of in the center of everything. So you kind of have to learn quickly. So yeah, it can be challenging because of that, but it's easy to hold aggro, so at least you know you'll be able to do that, right? And second of all, it's important to understand that the best way to learn combat mechanics and learn the fights of the game is when you have no choice. And if you are a tank, you really have no choice. You have to move out of everything. 9 times out of 10, the tank will have to avoid every mechanic for a boss. Now, once in a while, there's a mechanic that is, that focuses on, say, a healer in the group, or one that focuses on, DPS, or focuses on stuff away from the tank. But 9 times out of 10, the tank is going to have to move out of every single attack and every single mechanic that a boss has, simply because they're standing toe-to-toe with them. Now, that may seem intimidating to begin with, but the reality of it is that you learn the fights very thoroughly when you're tanking. And so I think that it's a very good class for people that are brand new to MMOs. And it's still good. It's still a good choice for people coming from other MMOs. I think it's a very good choice. Plus, you get the benefit of having tank privilege, which means a little more forgiving on the damage that you take because of the natural mitigation. You're a tank. It also is a little more forgiving in like I said, your class mechanics, meaning your role is to hold aggro, and as long as you have your tank stance on and you're hitting stuff, you're going to hold aggro. Maybe not to other tanks, but like when you're doing 8-mans, stuff like that. But definitely when you're in a group with other classes and there is no other tank. I mean, I've never had another class be able to pull aggro off of me before. So, well, not when I had my tank stance actually turned on. Another thing is you can experience the tank privilege of practical insta-Q. Now, it's not quite on the level of a healer, but it's still a very fast Q times. I don't remember having to wait any longer than maybe 1 or 2 minutes when I was leveling up to level 80. Whereas some DPS had to wait as long as 15-20 minutes just to get into one dungeon. And so I think that's something, especially for newer players wanting to experience the game. It helps keep it flowing steadily rather than hitting these points where you have to do a dungeon and you have to wait 20 minutes. I mean, there's other stuff you can do, which, you know, as an example, see if he's online. He's not. But as an example, our free company mate, Lord Michael, right? He has started fishing when he is in dungeon queues, so he's still doing something productive for his characters while he's waiting. But if you want to experience it, straight through, I highly recommend a tank, like I said, because of all the other reasons, and they still have a fast queue times. I wouldn't discourage anybody from playing a healer, but it is one of those classes that it puts you in the harder of the two most important roles in a group. Because as a healer, you're going to have to basically play whack-a-mole with people's hit point bars. And you have to kind of focus on that. But if you're going to start as a healer, you won't have to learn the mechanics as much. You still have to learn a lot. But my advice to you is, until you get used to healing, make sure you focus on just healing on your teammates. Now, here's the reason why. Yes, you'll have to do DPS later on, but you don't need to do it early on. You'll have to do it later on. And so use that time in the beginning to get yourself in the habit of healing well, learning what to look for, learning how strong your heal spells are and stuff like that. So healer can be a good first class to play, but at the same time, I feel that to be a little more difficult. So it's not really the best if this is your first MMO. Somebody from other MMOs will probably have a little easier time, and therefore I recommend it for them. But definitely not if this is your first MMO, because you're not used to being able to, keep track of your party's hit points yet. Another decent class, like I said, tank's my first choice for somebody who's coming from anywhere, actually, whether it's your first MMO or from another MMO. Tank's always my first choice because it is so forgiving, and because you will learn the fights and it'll make you better at the other classes, simply because now you know the mechanics inside and out, because you had to. You were standing in them the entire game through, right? But if you're gonna play another, but if you don't want to do a tank or a healer as your first job, I would recommend probably, and see, I say this is hard. This is a hard decision for me to think of, because the melee DPS can be a little harder, because you have to be able to move just like the tank as far as learning the mechanics and get out of the way of stuff. But the downside is that you're kind of thrown in the deep end, because you have to learn to do that at the same time as your damage rotation, because your damage rotation is extremely important as a DPS. With a tank, you can learn your rotation and you'll learn it over time, but the rotation is generally a lot more simple than it is for a melee DPS, and so it's easier to learn the mechanics as a tank than it is as a DPS, because you're not worried about putting numbers up. You're worried about keeping the whole group alive, and as long as you have aggro as a tank, the group's going to be alive, right? But if I were to pick one, I would say I don't recommend Bard as DPS necessarily, because they don't really do a whole ton of damage. But I recommend them if you want. I still recommend them because they're a ranged DPS. It keeps you out of the way. It allows you to focus on learning, your DPS rotation while not having quite as few or quite the same number of mechanics to dodge. But once you hit Ishgard and you have the ability to, I would switch to Mechanist at that point, because Mechanist does so much more damage. And I think that would be more beneficial to a lot of you guys. But again, like I said, my personal preference for you guys is to play a tank first, primarily because you will learn the mechanics of the game of the combat so much better. But like I said, a tank's not for everybody. but it is what I recommend to people coming from no experience in MMOs whatsoever. If you're coming from another MMO, you can do tank or healer. Either one's fine. Primarily because you may have already played a healer and you already know what to look for as far as healing. Perfectly fine. But if this is your first MMO ever, make sure I would recommend a tank. Because you can play all the classes in the game, period, on the same character. So, but yeah, that's what I would say today. If you're going to play Final Fantasy 14 or any MMO, but especially Final Fantasy 14, I would recommend playing a tank before anything else, if at all possible. Just because you'll learn the mechanics better and you'll learn the game a little bit better. So I hope this video was at least a little bit helpful for you guys. Wanted to make sure I gave you a little bit of insight into why I recommend certain classes and which ones I do recommend. Like I said, melee can be fun, but at the same time, it can be a little rough because you don't have the mitigation of a tank, and you're expected to put DPS numbers up while dodging. So, but yeah, that's the reason why I suggest tanks, and what I would like to see a lot more of you do if you're new to the game. With all that said, I just want to let you know that if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends so that they have a chance to at least see my thoughts or another person's thoughts on what they would think the best starting job would be. Games are the great unifier. When you're playing games, it doesn't matter what country you're from, what skin color you have, what religion you are, what gender you are, none of that matters. Political party doesn't matter. When you're in the game, all that matters is playing the game together. And that's why the games are the great unifier, and that's why I think that gamers can and should take the responsibility of being unifiers themselves, because we need to stick together, because the future at some point will be ours to run, which means we need to make sure we are doing the best that we can, and we have to stick together, guys. Also, I want to remind you, I stream on Twitch on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, going on until midnight Eastern Time. So why don't you scroll on down in the description, click my link to my Twitch channel, head on over there, follow me over there, and we'll have a grand old time, get to know each other a little bit more as we chat, and I get to play some game. If there's any questions you have about Final Fantasy or any other game, or any suggestions of what games you'd like to watch or play, leave all of that in the comment section below. I'll make sure I read them, because I always do. I want to give a shout out to my boy Killicam. The link to his channel will be in the description, as well as Crafty Rob. The link to his channel will be in the description as well. That's part of my stream team. We game together, we grow together. That's the point of our little stream team there. With all that said, I just want to remind you guys to live your best game, and I'll catch you all on the next one.